G'day, you mob. Pete here. Welcome to Aussie English. Today I'm going to be reacting to an interesting video. This one is from Kinder, Australian, on YouTube. Dirty-ish Aussie slang words that confuse me as an American. Let it begin.
G'day guys, welcome back to the channel. My name's Caitlin. I'm an American writer living in beautiful Sydney, Australia, and there are some dirty Aussie words that really do confuse Americans. Some of them might not even be that dirty here in Australia, but in the States, oh boy. These can be dirty, filthy, sexy, offensive.
This is what you're here for, guys. This is what you're here for. Come on. All right, let it rip.
The list goes on, so let's dive into some dirty Aussie words that confused this American the first time I heard them. Grab a bicky, grab a cuppa, and let's get right into this video.
Man, look at that. She's a pro with Aussie slang already, so she clearly knows her stuff. She's already saying bicky, biscuit, and cuppa, a cup of tea or a cup of coffee. Good on you.
Number one, and I'm not afraid to say the word, but I am going to have to censor it for YouTube because it doesn't like it. Number one is the C word. In the States, it is probably the most offensive thing that you can call a woman. And in all fairness, it's pretty offensive here in Australia too when you use it in that context. But other than the insult and the female body part, that word typically isn't used in the States.
We've talked about this recently a lot, and there seems to be a bit of a divide between men and women, which is unsurprising, and it's what I expected. But Australian men and women, I have seen in my comments section, I would never say this word. I've lived in Australia. I never hear this word. There's a whole bunch of women in particular, older women saying, I would never do this. And it's like, I know, I understand. There's plenty of people who would never use this. Plenty of people who don't swear at all. I totally get it. I totally respect you. But I think you must admit there is a sizable proportion of the population in Australia that do indulge in the odd C-bomb, okay? It's one of those things I always tell students, I teach Australian English. If in doubt, go without. If you don't feel like it's something you should say, if you're worried people will get offended, if you're worried the context is, you're at work or something, don't do it. But if you're with mates, you feel comfortable and you know what their personalities are like, they know what you're like, and you're having a bit of a joke, I reckon unleash, A good place to start is just asking them, how do we use the word cunt? How do we say it? How do we say it like an Australian? How do we do it?
Here in Australia, while people don't go saying it every other word, it is a lot more common here, and it's typically in conjunction with some sort of descriptor, whether you're a mad C word, a funny C word, a sick C word. Those are all actually compliments.
They are, that's true. So my dad always makes this point. He always says there's a big difference between being like a stupid cunt and a mad cunt, or a dumb cunt and a sick cunt, or a funny cunt. So in those phrases, we're effectively using the word cunt. And I feel bad just dropping it that many times. YouTube's probably gonna demonetize this one. So it's interesting how we're using the C-bomb there to refer to a person. So it'd be like mad guy, sick guy, funny guy, mad man, mad person, mad dude, mad bloke. And we're just using cunt as a way of saying person. He's a cunt. All right. I think we're going to have to go for a while without talking about this word. It is one I've heard. Americans, you guys will have to comment. Do you ever hear it? Do other Americans say it? If I was in America and I was just my usual self with American friends and I was dropping the C-bomb, whether or not trying to insult anyone from time to time, would they totally lose it?
But if somebody is just flat out calling you a straight up C word, that's clearly an insult. You kind of have to take the word in context to how it's being used and the situation that it's being used in. If you're fighting with somebody and they drop the C word, chances are it's not going to be a compliment.
Now, one thing to mention here too, which I don't think I have mentioned in previous videos, I will use the word with mates, men. Men, I will use it with men. I think the only time you would ever use this on a woman is if she's the worst possible human being you could imagine. And it has a different gravity. It has a different punch when you use this on a woman because it's obviously associated with sexual organs and everything like that. So there is this sort of sexist nature to the language, which when obviously you're using it with a man, it doesn't carry that same weight. And it's ironic. You can call a guy a dick. You can say he sucks balls. You can use all these ones that use male anatomy and it's not considered sexist. But when you use that kind of language on a woman, you're going to offend everyone, I think. Pretty much everyone. Reserve that for the worst possible imaginable woman, and even then you're going to make yourself look pretty bad, I think, if you use it in that context. So yeah, that's the only caveat I have there.
But when I first came over here, I was surprised to hear people actually use it and use it in multiple different contexts. Number two is root, which is very different compared to the States. Here in Australia, they are not going to root for the home team like you hear in that old school song, Take Me Out to the Ball Game. No, root here is a very crude, kind of bogan way of saying fuck. Like the crude actual action of fucking, not just fuck this, fuck that.
Yeah, so we would never use it as a synonym for fuck in terms of, oh, fuck, or fucking hell. You would never say root. You would never say, oh, root, or rooting hell. You use it to talk about the act of having sex, right? To have a shag, to have a root, to have sex, to fuck someone, to root someone. And again, it is very informal. It's less offensive than saying fuck, I think. You know, if you were trying to politen things up a little bit and not use the F-bomb, you'd probably say, you know, oh, I had a little cheeky root on the weekend. It's less offensive. But I think there's still plenty of people who'd be like, why are you talking about this at all with me? You know? So again, context dependent. You're gonna use it with friends. You're gonna use it when you're obviously talking about these things that you may not talk about with just anyone. But yes, it is always something that makes us laugh when we hear Americans say things like, I'll be rooting for you. And in our mind, you know, or when they say, I'm rooting for the team, you know, I'd be like, how is having sex with someone going to help? How is that going to help me? How is that going to help my team win? You know, I'd rather you barrack for them. I'd rather you support them. You don't have to have sex for my team to win sport. So rooting for, or, you know, yeah, give them a root. I don't know how you guys use it. It is one of those things that just makes us laugh. When we went to Canada when I was younger, I know there's a brand over there that's called Roots, I think, and it's like a beaver. I think the mascot's a beaver, which has other connotations, right? So I remember buying up one of those jumpers, like a surf kind of brand jumper, like Quicksilver or Rip Curl, and wearing that around with pride in Australia. And everyone just being like, where'd you get that? Canada, man. Canada. The other thing is there's jokes in Australia that we'll use with that, like, what's that wombat joke? That it's like, I have to look it up. Here we go. I mean, here's the badge, right? There's this ongoing joke with the wombat. It eats roots and leaves, or it eats roots, shoots, and leaves. Yeah, I'm sure you can work out what the idea is there, but yeah, obviously you'll get the context of roots.
So when you talk about Aussies rooting or having a root, they are not talking about cheering, they're talking about sex.
I should mention we also refer to the roots of a plant with roots as well. So you can use it in that sense, and it's obviously not offensive.
Number 3 is rubber, and to Aussies this is completely innocent. To Americans, it is not. Rubber in the States, besides material, means condom. So when you're in Australia and there are little kids asking for a rubber, clearly that's not what they're talking about. A rubber in Australia is an eraser. So something that is completely innocent to Aussies confuses the hell out of Americans the first time they hear it, especially because it could be coming out of a little kid's mouth.
I never thought about that before. But yeah, in primary school in particular, obviously, this is your first kind of interaction with pencils. I think, yeah, you know, you first start using a pencil to write and draw, and then you get your pen license. I wonder if they still do that. And I remember we would always have these rubbers, right? They would have one end that was like grey and the other end that was white, and would slowly become greyer as you rubbed out graphite. And it would, yeah, they were rubbers. I mean, we knew what an eraser was, but we'd always say rubber, 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 rubber. Whereas for, yeah, condoms, you would say condom, connie. I'm trying to think, do we have any other slang terms for condom? A wetsuit? I don't know. Can you guys think of any other ones? And what am I missing? But yeah, we'd just say condom or connie from memory. But rubber, it's always weird when you hear Americans using that in the opposite way, because you're just like, they're about to have sex. Why does he want to suddenly go and get a rubber? Is he going to do some riding?
Number 4 is pash, and I heard this a few times before I actually understood what it meant. Pash is just to make out, but the reason it's pash is like it's passionately making out, so shortening it to pash. I swear Aussie slang is just on another level.
It's cool. We can use this as a verb to pash someone. You might give someone a pash. You can have a pash, so we can use it as a noun. And it would come from passionate or passionately, right? They're making out passionately. They're having a pash. They're pashing. And you can get pash rash. If someone gives you a hickey, you know, they're sucking on your neck and you get that bruise, that's a pash rash. This is language you would probably use when you're younger. I think you would just say make out or kiss, or schnog you can use as well. To have a schnog, to schnog someone, that's also to pash, to have a pash. Yeah, I think that's sort of it. But I haven't used pash rash in probably 15 years. I haven't talked about that sort of thing since I was in high school.
Number 5, and this one gets Americans in trouble all over the world, not just in Australia, is fanny, which is also an unfortunate nickname for any woman named Francine.
We always understood this from American TV shows. What is it called? The Nanny, right? Was it Was she called Fran? No. Is it the nanny? Was it that? Was she's called Fanny? I can't remember, man. But anyway, we always heard it. You know, you would hear people called Fanny and you would laugh because it's a vagina. It's a vagina. It's what young kids would refer to a vagina as. It's like saying Willy for boy. It's language that adults don't really use. I wouldn't even say it with my daughter who's, 3 years old. We would just use the appropriate anatomical language, funnily enough. But yeah, whenever you hear about grown men in America, like Joe Rogan, I think I heard once back in the day talking about wearing a fanny pack, and you're just like, what? And then you realize he's talking about a bum bag. It's a bum bag. I don't know why we call it a bum bag. Probably makes about as much sense as a fanny pack because you guys use fanny for butt, even though the pack is kind of in front of you. So it would almost make more sense if it was us calling it a fanny pack for women wearing it because it's in front of their fannies. It always made us giggle growing up. You would just be like, it's not a butt. It's not your ass. It's a woman's genitals.
But fanny in Australia and the UK and I think a few other countries is actually a woman's vagina.
Let's have a bit of fun here. So again, forgive my chat GPT, it's in Portuguese, but why do Americans call vagina no that's us. Call bums. Fannies. Let's see. What does ChatGPT have to say here? In American English, fanny is used to mean buttocks or bum or ass, but in British and Australian English, it has a much more explicit meaning referring to female genitalia. The difference likely emerged due to divergent slang development over time. Yes, so our slang just diverged and changed. The American usage of fanny for bum seems to have its origins in the early 20th century slang. It's thought to be a playful diminutive term, possibly from the name Fanny. Okay. So it came from a woman called Fanny, which was a popular female name at the time. In the US, the term stuck with its lighthearted, non-explicit meaning, so Americans continue to use it without any awkward implications. In British and Australian English, though, it developed its own meaning, so when these slang differences cross paths, it can create some awkward and funny misunderstandings. Why do Australians and Brits call a vagina a fanny? They still haven't really gotten to the bottom of this difference. Shorten the explanation. Come on, ChatGPT. In British and Australian English, fanny came to mean vagina in the late 19th century, so even earlier. There we go. We got there first, guys. Likely as playful slang, it was a common nickname for Francis. Oh, there you go. And like many names, it evolved to have a cheeky, risque meaning. So that is so funny. In Australian and British English, the word fanny, meaning vagina, came from a male name Francis, and in American English, the word fanny meaning bum came from the female name Fanny, which, what was that long for? I can't even remember now. The name Fanny is traditionally short for Francis. So was it a female name or a male name? Either way, that's really funny that it came from the same place, it seems, but became different parts of the body, depending on which country you're from or what dialect of English you speak. The more you know.
So when a woman in the States is wearing a fanny pack, in Australia and other countries, it's actually called a bum bag.
Boom.
You do not want to call it a fanny pack over here. You are going to get laughed at so much.
They'd be like, why have you got a pack of fannies in your bum bag, mate? Yeah, I think they've gone out of fashion. It's kind of like that old getting your hoodie and tying it around your waist. I mean, some people do it, but bum bags were definitely much more popular when I was a kid. I haven't seen many around. Maybe it's a kids thing nowadays where kids use bum bags much more frequently. Maybe we'll go through that phase soon with mine.
Number 6 is Randy. So if your name is Randy, I feel so bad for you if you come to Australia. Randy is a word that people will use to describe being aroused or turn on. You're getting randy. You're feeling randy. So you can see why if somebody's named Randy and they come over here to visit, Aussies are probably going to pick on them.
It's like being horny. You want sex. That's what Randy means. We probably got first exposure to it when I was a kid watching South Park. And is it Stan's dad who's called Randy? And they just always use it. And eventually it gets to the point where you're no longer thinking, oh God, yeah, lol the joke. But when you first hear something like that, you are just kind of like, why would you call your kid that, right? Why would you call your kid that?
So I feel so bad if anybody's named Randy and they decide to visit anywhere outside of the US. Because in the US, that word is just a name. Now, number 7 is crack on. Aussies probably know what that means. To Americans, it goes way over our heads. Crack on is something I'd heard a few times until I actually had it explained to me at some point. I thought cracking on was like, okay, maybe having a joke or making fun of somebody a little bit, which so makes sense because of how Aussies do crack on, which is flirting. Aussies are notorious for having that slightly dry, sarcastic sense of humor of taking the piss out of each other, of making fun of each other. So to my American ears, it does make sense that crack on would come across as picking on somebody, teasing somebody, joking with somebody, when in Australian, crack on actually means to flirt.
It's not flirt as much as hit on. Yeah, you can flirt with someone and it can kind of be innocent, if you know what I mean. Like you could just be a flirtatious kind of person, but you wouldn't say if someone was just that kind of personality where they're being flirtatious, but they're not really trying to get into your pants, that they're cracking onto you. You know, I mean, cracking onto someone is generally you are sexually interested in them, romantically interested in them. You want to hook up with them then and there. You want to have a relationship with them, but you are at that moment trying to flirt with them with the intention of it going further, right? You're hitting on someone. You're cracking onto someone. We can also use the verb crack, and this is something I haven't used since I was a kid either. When I was a kid, we would have the phrase to crack a fat, and that was to get an erection. It sounds so childish. This is childish language. You wouldn't say that nowadays, right? Imagine you're a young man and you're getting down and dirty with a beautiful woman and you're like, I'm just waiting to crack a fat. Give me a sec. Has he cracked a fat? You wouldn't use that language as an adult. I think it's very childish. It would be more something kids would use when poking fun at other kids if for whatever reason, they had cracked a fat, they had a stiffy. We've got loads of those sorts of slang terms. Another one, what? A boner, right? But yeah, to crack a fat. I don't know where it comes from. It sounds so stupid when you literally think of like if you got fat out of, say, a cow or something and you had it in front of you, you can't really crack it, right? Maybe you cooked the fat and then the fat is like solid and then you crack it. Like, why does crack mean to become erect? Again, I should have looked these up ahead of time, though I didn't know it. But you'll have to ask your Australian friends, how would you use crack in Australian slang, and see what they reply.
So if you're out at the pub with somebody and some guy comes up to your friend and starts cracking onto them, they're not necessarily joking with them, although they probably are because they're trying to flirt with them. Number 8 is pissed. Typically in the States, pissed just means you're angry. Normally, like, you're really angry if you're pissed or you're pissed off. In Australia, pissed also means you're drunk. So if somebody in the pub is pissed, there's a small chance they could be angry, but most likely people mean that they're saying that they're drunk.
We use piss a lot of different ways in Australian English, and I guess that's an adjective in this case, so it's sort of like piss, to be pissed. You are pissed. I am pissed. You could be angry. You could be furious. It tends to be that you're enraged. You're pissed. I'm pissed, man. Someone ran into my car. I'm pissed. I'm pissed. It's like livid. When we're drinking, though, you can be pissed once you're drunk, as she says. But you can refer to alcohol as piss. So we can use it as a noun. I'm going to have some piss. I'm going to drink some piss. You guys, are you getting on the piss tonight? You getting on the piss? It's to drink alcohol. You can say that someone's weak as piss. They're weak as piss. And that just means obviously very weak. They could be a coward. You're weak as piss, mate. Weak as piss. You can take the piss. That is to joke with someone, to take the mickey, to take the piss out of someone, to just take the piss, to tease someone, to make fun of someone. There must be a whole bunch that I'm missing. Again, you guys, you help me out in the comments. If you can think of other ways that Australians use the word piss, you could tell someone to piss off, go away. Piss off. And you're not meaning like urinate and walk away from me. It has nothing to do with urination and going to the toilet. It just means go away. Piss off. Nick off. Go away. Piss off, mate. So we use it in so many different ways in Australian English. Don't know why. It just obviously caught on, sounded good, and it's fun to say. Piss. 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 Piss.
Which is also why people say, like, I'm getting on the piss this weekend. Basically means I'm planning on drinking a lot this weekend. And number 9, I feel like you guys already knew that this one was going to make the list, and that is thongs. Yes, it confuses so many Americans when they hear Aussies talking about needing to grab a pair of thongs. Because in the States, we all know that thongs are called flip-flops, and thongs in the States are typically what you call G-strings here in Australia.
Yeah, G-string. Oh my God. There's a really funny Carl Barron joke. You guys should YouTube Carl Barron. He's an Australian comedian, bald dude, better looking than me, a bit older, from Queensland. He has a joke about thongs. And effectively, when he goes to the US, he's like,
You know what you call thongs over here? Women's G-strings. Nobody told me that the first time I got here.
That is one thing where when we hear Americans saying thong, you're just like, God damn. Why do they keep talking? Like, why? It's not a G-string. It goes on your foot. goes on your foot. And that song, was it Usher? Nelly? One of those artists back in the day, that thong, thong, the thong, thong, thong. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that always made us laugh as well. We were just like, why is he singing about beach shoes? Yes.
And G-strings in the States are also G-strings in Australia. Which, when you think about it, given the structure of an actual thong, it does make sense because that little bit does go between your toes to keep everything together. It makes sense to call them thongs. But to Americans, it is going to take a little while to get used to hearing and eventually saying thongs.
We gotta ask ChatGPT this too. Why do Americans use thongs for G-strings and Australians use thongs for sandals, right? Flip-flops. Let's see what it says. In American English, thong evolved to refer to a type of skimpy underwear, G-string, in the 20th century, as the word initially described a narrow strip of material which fit the style of this underwear. So there you go. It must be to do with that strip of material more so than it being the underwear originally. In Australia, thongs has long meant flip-flop sandals, as the term originally described the thin strap that goes between the toes. This usage stuck in Australia, so the word now refers to footwear rather than underwear there. The difference is just a result of the term evolving separately in each country, but obviously it's from that original strip of material. So there you go. It's cool. It's interesting that we have these same slang terms that, well, the words are the same, but they mean different things, and that they have had the same origin. That is really cool. The video's gone long enough, guys. If you can think of any other rude Australian slang terms that we use that shock you guys, leave them in the comments below. YouTube reckons you're going to enjoy this video, and I'll see you next time. Ta-roo!